there, I'm your host, the CGI clone of Christopher Reeve, and I'm reporting to you live from inside of James Gunn's walls. And boy, do we have a doozy for you. The Flash movie is looking to perform much worse than Black Adam at the box office, with early reports saying it will be lucky to crack $300 million. This begs the question why Shazam 2 and the Flash producer Peter Safran is staying as co-CEO of DC Studios when Black Adam had a higher box office than the last 5 DCEU movies. Yet, The Rock did not in fact get to change his hierarchy. The self-proclaimed real fans of DC were nowhere to be found at the Flash movie theater screenings. However, they were probably too busy celebrating the 522nd week of complaining about John Kent's death from the 2013 movie Man of Steel. Yes, that's a real number. Unfortunately, a 90-year-old Batman and the digital recreation of dead actors wasn't enough to win over the general audience in their absence. R.I.P. box office. Speaking of faces you can't trust, prominent DC Twitter account Goddess of War was exposed for stealing the photos and identity of a TikTok model. People first started to become suspicious when the Goddess account said that she went to school with my totally real Canadian girlfriend. You wouldn't know her though, because she goes to a different school. This revelation makes an encounter back in January even funnier when known nutcase and future serial killer Eric got into such a toxic Twitter beef against the Goddess War account that all of comic book Twitter dragged him for weeks until he entered a temporary digital exile. Unfortunately, like Palpatine, somehow he has returned. With that, we're happy to announce that Eric is this month's Bass Pro Shop Catfishing Loser of the Year. Your gift card is non-refundable. On the topic of future crimes, David Zaslav is said to be taking an emergency meeting with Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, and Paul Thomas Anderson in regards to Zaslav's attempts to liquidate the Turner Classic Movies branch from the Warner Brothers Discovery Company. There's been no official statement on whether or not this will be a cage match or a tag team event, but reports are saying that the loser of the Last Man Standing event may be elected as the new head of DC so that they can share the shame of the DCU with James Gunn. Speaking of gun control, the man who failed to outgross Batman vs. Superman for the 21st time with last month's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 assured all of his completely real fans that his casting process for Superman Legacy has been the best casting experience he's ever had. However, James Gunn also said that The Flash was the best DC movie ever, and that he didn't want to run DC or direct a Superman movie, so take his word with a capsule of cyanide and a grain of salt. Not content to let Warner Brothers and DC ruin the art of storytelling by themselves, the MCU debuted AI-generated opening credits for the new Secret Invasion series on Disney+. This shot coincided with the showrunner informing interviewers that Kevin Feige told him not to read the Secret Invasion comics. When asked why they would use AI and ignore the comics, a Marvel spokesperson said, quote, "We've been ignoring comics and letting AI run this show for over a decade. After She-Hulk, we just figured you guys didn't care anymore." And honestly, I feel that. Speaking of bombs, Christopher Nolan told the press that Oppenheimer can be seen as a horror movie. He said that with the use of dread and the darkness and the way he shot his scenes, it feels much more like a horror movie than anything he's ever done, aside from working at Warner Brothers. Wrapping up the news today is Netflix. Not only did we see Henry Cavill say goodbye to his role as Geralt of Rivia in Brazil this week, we also witnessed another look at Rebel Moon. It appears that both Henry and Zach will be busy doing sci-fi for some time now as Henry transitions over to executive produce Amazon's Warhammer 40k franchise. And in a bizarre turn of events, Vanity Fair published a new box office graph showcasing the finances of Warner Brothers superhero films for the last 10 years. Not only was Zack Snyder validated by these data points, but a now heavily bankrupt Warner Brothers is apparently putting even more of their content and leasing more of their properties to Netflix, making us all wonder if they only renamed their streaming service Max so that killing off a brand like HBO wouldn't be on Zaslav's permanent record. This has been Twitter This Week. Tune in next week for your quick fix on the news nobody cares about.